Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to talk about the horror movie, The Manor Where Time Forgot. So grab your ghost-busting gear, because it's time for a scary movie night. Let's get into it. Jessica accidentally inherited her great-grandmother's estate after she passed away. It was a huge house with even bigger problems. Now she's moving right in, and things are about to get real. Super old people are creepy. That's just a fact. We've all seen the movies. Not only was it clear that the home hadn't been occupied in decades, but it also looked like it hadn't been properly maintained either. It needed a fresh coat of paint, and the yard was filled with weeds. Still, Jessica was excited to get started and began immediately contacting local contractors to get estimates on how much it would cost to renovate the home. Creepy old people are one of the best go-tos when it comes to scaring the living crap out of people. She wondered if maybe she should call a local electrician to come and check out the wiring. After all, she didn't want anything to catch fire while she was gone. As she made her way to the kitchen, she noticed the pantry door that had also started to rot away. Jessica reached out to touch the peeling paint on the door when suddenly it swung open on its own. In fact, he actually seemed pretty pleased with it. She couldn't wait to restore it to its former glory. Tools would go missing and then be found in strange places. Lights would flicker and turn off by themselves. The footsteps grew louder and more frantic, and then the pantry door swung open on its own. Jessica screamed and ran from the room. She could hear the sound of the footsteps following her, getting louder and more urgent. Jessica began to feel like she was being watched all the time. She would find objects moved or broken. And sometimes she would wake up in the middle of the night, feeling like someone was standing over her. She could hear footsteps in the hallway outside her bedroom. Then she heard a voice calling her name. She could hear the voice getting closer and closer. She walked down the hallway and found the source of the noise, a rocking horse. It had fallen off the shelf in the nursery and broken to pieces. Jessica was shaken, but determined to stay in the house. She would not let a ghost drive her out. She learned that William had died in the house, but he had not been killed. He had simply disappeared. No one had ever found out what happened to him, but Jessica was determined to change that. Jessica screamed and buried her head under the covers. As she read through his entries, she learned that he had been writing to his brother about his strange experiences in the house. He wrote about how he had been hearing voices and seeing apparitions. He also wrote about how he felt like he was being watched all the time. She looked in the attic and the basement, but she couldn't find anything. He wrote about a dark figure that would appear to him in his dreams, beckoning him to come to it. In the letter, William wrote that he had decided to sit in the house and find out what was haunting him. He said that he was not afraid, that he was actually looking forward to meeting the ghost. The brother never heard from William again. What did you think? Which character was your favorite? And which scene was the most terrifying? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next week with a brand new scary tale. Until then, stay safe and don't look in the attic. He wrote about how he had tried to resist the figure, but it was no use. Had William stayed in the house and died? Or had the ghost taken him away? She didn't know, but she was determined to find out. She contacted a priest and asked him to come to the house and perform an exorcism. The priest was reluctant, but he eventually agreed. Together, Jessica and the priest performed the exorcism, and William's ghost was finally able to move on. Jessica decided to stay in the house and try to contact William's ghost. She wanted to ask him what had happened to him and why he was haunting the house. He was drawn to it like a moth to a flame. In her dream, she met William's ghost. He told her that he was trapped in the house and that he needed her help to move on. Just when she was about to give up, she found a hidden room behind a bookshelf in the library. Inside the room, she found a box filled with William's belongings. Jessica was free to finally make the house her own. But she never forgot the ghost of William, the boy who had been taken away, or the lessons that he had taught her. There was a diary, a collection of letters, and a photograph of William as a young boy. She tried to keep busy during the day, but even then the strange things continued to happen. Mary had written about a terrible event that had happened in the house. She wrote about how her brother had been taken from her and how she never saw him again. Jessica was horrified. Could this be the reason why the house was haunted? Had William died in the house? And if so, why? She ran to the front door and flung it open, stepping outside. Jessica began to feel like she was losing her mind. Then one day she found the diary of the little girl who had lived in the house years ago. As she read the diary, she learned about the little girl's life and her family. She learned that the little girl's name was Mary, and that she had a brother named William. She could hear the footsteps on the porch, and when she turned around, she saw the door slowly closing on its own. And sometimes Jessica would swear she could hear the sound of children playing in the halls. They suggested that she call a priest to perform an exorcism, but Jessica was skeptical. She didn't want to believe that her home was haunted, but she couldn't deny the evidence of her own eyes and ears. Was William her ancestor? Had he come back to the house to find his long-lost relative? At first, she tried to ignore these things, chalking them up to stress or fatigue. But as time went on, the incidents became more frequent and more intense. Jessica started to feel like she was making progress in restoring the house. She had hired a team of contractors to help her fix up the building, and they were well on their way to creating a beautiful new home for her, knocking over a nearby chair in the process. She couldn't believe what she had just seen. Was the house haunted? She didn't think so. When the investigator arrived, he told her that he had never seen anything like it. He set up cameras and other equipment to monitor the house overnight, but nothing happened. Jessica was disappointed, but she wasn't surprised. She had hoped that someone could help her, but she was beginning to think that she was on her own. But now, she wasn't so sure. She continued exploring the rest of the house, trying not to think about the fact that the door had just opened on its own. It looked like it had caved in years ago, and no one had bothered to fix it since then. As she opened it, she noticed that it was filled with neat handwriting and pressed flowers. It was clear that this belonged to a young girl who lived in the house many years ago. Jessica felt a sudden urge to find out more about the girl and her family. As she looked at the door closer, she noticed that the wood was slowly rotting away. Next to the rocking horse was a vanity table with a small mirror. Jessica looked into the mirror and gasped. She could have sworn she saw the ghost of a little girl standing behind her. Then she quickly looked away. Maybe she was just exhausted and letting her imagination get the best of her. It was clear that this part of the house hadn't been maintained in years. With a shiver running down her spine, one of the documents was an original copy of the deed to the house, which showed that it had been built in 1864. Another document was a marriage certificate showing that Eleanor, Jessica's great-grandmother, had been married to a man named William. According to the certificate, they were married in the same year that the house was built. Jessica headed back inside to get away from the cold autumn wind blowing through the gaps in the window frames. Jessica figured that it was probably full of asbestos and lead paint, so it probably wasn't safe anyway. She continued walking around the house until she came across a set of double doors that were made of heavy, sturdy oak. These must have been the front doors, she thought. Maybe she should get these fixed up and use them as the main entrance instead of the side door. He explained that those types of plants tend to grow everywhere when no one is around to take care of them. And he was obviously correct. There was clearly no shortage of work to be done here. Jessica sighed, knowing that it would be months before she could start living here herself. She decided to look around outside the home to see what else she was working with. They might move slow, but they sure do shuffle up to you when you least expect it and say, "Boo." Then you crap your pants and feel kind of ashamed because you thought you were too cool for jump scares. Hi, I'm your host. Every Thursday, we bring you the most spine-tingling and utterly terrifying stories from around the world. When she heard of her passing, she knew that she would inherit something, but she didn't know what. She was shocked when she found out that her great-grandmother left her the entirety of her estate, including her massive home. But Jessica couldn't pass up this lucky break. She was a struggling actress who could really use some cash. And the house looked like the perfect place to make her dreams come true. Stories that will make you question everything you see, hear, and feel. If you dare, join us each week for a new installment of terrifying tales you won't soon forget. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Our next tale is the manor where time forgot. What if I told you there was a way to scare not just yourself, but an entire town? What if I told you that somewhere out there in the countryside sits an old manor house waiting to swallow unsuspecting victims whole? Well, there is, and it's happened more times than we can count. Come along as we tell you the tale of the manor where time forgot. Jessica had been estranged from her great-grandmother Eleanor for most of her life. When she arrived at the house, though, she realized that she had quite the fixer on her hands. As she was meeting with the contractor, though, she noticed that he seemed unfazed by the overgrown shrubs and creeping vines that covered the house. She walked around the side of the house and gasped when she saw a two-story addition that was attached to the main house. Then she noticed that the brass doorknob on one of the doors was slightly loose, and when she tried to tighten it, it fell off completely. As she walked through the house, she noticed that every room she entered seemed to be colder than the last. Jessica screamed, jumped back. In the living room, she found an old diary lying on the floor. She picked it up and brushed off the dust. She went up to the second floor and found a nursery with a rocking horse in the corner. She continued searching the house until she found a hidden room filled with old photographs and documents. Jessica smiled as she learned more about the history of the house. However, as the renovations continued, strange things began to happen again. One day, Jessica was working in the kitchen when she heard the sound of footsteps in the pantry. She froze, listening intently. Shaking with fear, Jessica called the police and told them about the strange occurrences in her new home. They came and searched the house, but found nothing. As the days went by, the strange activity in the house grew worse. Finally, she decided to call a paranormal investigator. One night, Jessica was awakened in her bed by a loud crash. She sat up and listened. When she finally gathered herself, she got out of bed and went to investigate. But as the weeks went by, the strange events continued. But the diary also contained a dark secret. Determined to find out the truth, Jessica began to research her family history. She went back to the house and began to search for clues. As Jessica looked at the photograph, she felt a chill go down her spine. The boy in the picture looked exactly like her. As Jessica continued to explore the hidden room, she found a journal. It was William's journal. But the most disturbing thing that William wrote about was the dream he had been having. Then one day, William's brother received a letter from him. Jessica was horrified. She spent weeks trying to contact William, but she had no success. Then one night, she had a dream. When Jessica awoke from her dream, she knew what she had to do. As soon as William's ghost was gone, the strange activity in the house stopped. And that's the end of our story.